Hi everyone and welcome. I am joined today by Ambassador Bhadrakumar, who spent decades as a diplomat, assigned to places such as the Soviet Union, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Germany, South Korea, Turkey, Sri Lanka, and now writing excellent articles at Indian Punchline, which I can't recommend enough. Definitely worth reading. And welcome to the program.
Professor, good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me. I look forward to our conversation.
Likewise, and especially on this topic, because again, you as spending decades as a diplomat, it's for me sometimes difficult to make sense of some of the diplomacy these days. That is, when Trump was elected, he suggested that he was prepared to walk away from the proxy war in Ukraine. At that time, he said, "Well, he still says this is Biden war and not his war." And of course, a few months have passed, and now we saw this attack on Russia's nuclear forces, in which I guess it's difficult to imagine that if not with assistance, at least the knowledge of some NATO countries. So how can this be explained? Where we are at this moment? From the view of the failure of diplomacy.
Yes, the let's start with this attack. Probably that's a good starting point. I must tell you right at the outset that I don't think that this is just a Ukrainian attempt. My feeling is, and this has been corroborated also by some podcasts which I watched, which involved participation by former CIA analysts, which is an expert opinion as far as I can see, who were very certain that possibly the CIA itself, or at least the MI6, were behind this. It is an audacious act, and it has been executed with great precision and great timing. And it has been camouflaged as a culmination of an effort which was mounted 18 months ago, which is neither here nor there. It is, but there is a mathematical precision here in different time zones, different regions in a far-flung country, assembling this sort of mounting this of an effort simultaneously, and a real-time attack from a coordinated point. So we must therefore, we cannot but view this as a very powerful signal to the Russian leadership. And it occurs to me that it is coinciding with a time when Russia has openly spoken about the imperative need to create a buffer zone, a security zone in Ukraine. And certain military operations have begun in this direction also. So the one message that I thought I saw here is this, that a message like this, that quote unquote, you can't go and hide from us. We'll come after you wherever you are, no matter there is a buffer zone or not. We have the means because we are inside your country. This sort of a message, a powerful message is there. And this means that it is a kind of an all-out war. And it gels with what the new German Chancellor has said. All inhibitions, there are no inhibitions going to be at work now onward. And it's an all-out effort to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. So buffer zone concept has been ridiculed. That is one thing. The second thing is a very apparent one, which is this, that there is a constituency of opinion in the Western world, that in the Western capitals, that all is not lost, that the inevitability of a Russian victory is only being propagated by some advocates of the Russian establishment. Otherwise, this is very much an open question, and Russia can still be defeated, or Russia can be brought to Russia can be prevented from dictating a settlement. So this is a second message which is there. And the third one is, I think it has got a very powerful resonance for the US establishment. That because that is where the next major step will be taken. Because I'll explain, because as far as I can see, the Istanbul talks have not is not going to result in any breakthrough. It is more or less turning out to be a ritual, after which the protagonists will go back to the battlefield, and which is where the matter will be decided. And increasingly, I get a feeling that this will spill over the Donbas region to the other regions also. Possibly, the next stage of the operation will see an offensive towards the Dnieper River. And then all kinds of possibilities are there being discussed openly, even by Russian analysts. So you see, the American reaction is going to be very important for Russia, and also for the dynamics of the situation, politico-military dynamics of the situation. Trump has so far spoken about some sanctions in a very weak voice, but I don't think this is the whole story. Because if you cast your eyes back, you find that Trump had a certain unfriendly position vis-a-vis Russia during his first term on this question. I get a feeling that from a culture of sending some weapons to the Ukrainian military, the transition towards a proxy war actually began during Trump's time. You know, the Javelin, for instance, which was handed over by Trump, was a game changer at that context, was a game changer, built on certain assumptions regarding the Russian military's aggregate strength, credibility, and all that. But other actions which had been taken by Trump were radically no different from what Biden had pursued. And in many aspects of the Biden presidency, there has been enormous continuity on this matter also. He picked up the threats from Trump on China. He picked up the threats from Trump on West Asia, that is what you call Middle East. And similarly in this case also, in the case of Ukraine also. So I put a question mark on the American intentions. Somehow I disagree with the Russian analysts who say that Trump is genuinely wanting peace and reconciliation with America. I belong to that school of thought that there has been a remarkable continuity in the US policy towards Russia. What do you call it? Strategic defeat, unraveling of Russia, fragmentation of Russia, regime change, whatever, but in that direction. And the drama did not end, actually. The agenda did not end with the collapse of the Soviet Union. So if you look at it from such a perspective, it is extremely loaded, the present situation, because contrary to the beliefs, Russia has got an upper hand, and it is not going to be easy, if at all possible. It is not going to be easy to reverse the tide, and therefore there is a certain type of strong reaction required. Immediately after coming to power, the German Chancellor has brought up the question of the long-range missiles. And now, at one point, at least he mentioned that this was a decision which was taken during the Biden administration. Is it conceivable that Trump was unaware of it? I don't think so. He's the man in charge. And definitely in that case, if so, either the German chancellor is lying that this was a decision which was taken months ago before Trump came to power, or the silence of Trump is tactical about this matter when he was fully aware of it, that there is a decision of this nature, and he had not resigned it from that. So all this added together, an extremely dangerous situation is likely to arise, because the attack on Russia has breached virtually all red lines. Now it is for Russia, in fact, to define a new deterrent. Russia is open for attack. I mean, it's not a small matter for a country like Ukraine to reach out and hit the Russian Far East, Siberia and the Russian Far East. That is what has happened. So it's not a question of how many aircrafts have been destroyed, whether there have been elements within Russia who collaborated with this project, who were participants in this project. All these are details, but the big picture is very disconcerting. And I tend to agree with you that all this adds up to a certain symbolism that diplomacy is taken the backseat. Probably the time for diplomacy is over, and it is going to be decided on the battlefield. This is a kind of messaging that I see in this.
Yeah, well, you might have a good point about Trump, because it does appear he's following, what can be referred to as a swing strategy, in which Trump tends to be quite, ambiguous. He doesn't convey any permanent loyalties. He seems to be switching a bit back and forth, but this is quite instrumental to get foreign leaders to want to fight for his affection. So the idea that Putin and Zelensky should fight over which side he should lean. This is one of the the purposes of such a swing strategy. But what does this say about where NATO is at this point? Because if NATO is now getting itself involved, again, I see this as, I can't imagine how NATO countries are not involved, given how much we learned from especially this article a few weeks ago in the New York Times, how pretty much the entire war has been organized by the Americans out of Germany. So if NATO is now participating in this direct attack on Russia's nuclear forces, how is it possible not for Russia to retaliate? This is, I'm assuming the people who are advising Putin are now saying that it's extremely dangerous not to retaliate, because where is the red line going after this? There's no more red lines if they just let themselves be attacked in this way. So what do you see as possible alternatives for Russia, or is there anything they can do now which won't cancel the negotiations?
You see, it depends on the Russian estimation of the strategic ambivalence on the part of the Trump administration. I am not inclined to segregate Trump and from NATO. I don't think that we are anywhere near a point where NATO can go tangentially and do something involving a superpower in a major theater like this, with no concurrence, no consultation with Washington. So it's a cat and mouse game, quite obviously. What is NATO without the United States? As things stand, maybe in future, Europeans may put together something of their own effort by way of an alliance, but that's a different matter. It's in the fullness of time. We have to wait and see whether anyone is going to be able to resurrect a NATO. But NATO's humiliation is something which, therefore, United States cannot distance itself from. That is the plain truth. And but at the same time, we are all pretending that this is a NATO involvement, and Trump didn't have anything to do with that. I think he's playing hide and seek. This is the only impression I get out of this. He's playing hide and seek, and he's waiting, in fact, for the Russians, precisely the point that you brought forward, precisely how Russia is going to react to the situation. And if Russia reacts to the situation in a certain way, which warrants invoking Article 5 of the NATO Charter, then all bets are off, as far as I can see. It is a world war. So Russian reaction will have to take into account, we'll have to assume, rather, that there will be an American counter-reaction to it, the Russian reaction. This is the dilemma that Russia is invited upon itself, because, in my opinion, these red lines that were successively laid down during the Biden administration's period should not have been allowed to be blurred like this, because the credibility of the superpower was linked to that directly. And when this happens time and again, and Russia draws a new red line, a further red line, and so on and so forth, what's the message it is conveying? So I cannot say that the Russian leadership will muster the courage, as the Soviet leadership did during the Second World War, for an effort of that kind of a mammoth nature. I tactically, you can explain the attritional war in many ways as a very smart thing to do. I don't disagree with it. There is an element of smartness in it. But it has gone on too long, isn't it? Don't you think? I have lived in that country, Russia, for so many years, during different periods of the Soviet era. I don't think it is the Russian people like this as an entertainment going on, this kind of a war, capturing 1.5 villages in a day or week or something like this. It's far too serious, and the way the Russia has gone about it, there is a flippant note to it, trivializing the seriousness of the matter, and just simply ad hoc reactions to it. Evidently, the intelligence system collapsed within Russia. This cannot be hidden anymore, and there's no point in blaming the MI6 or someone. They have penetrated Russia in a way that it is a paper tiger. That is it. This is not conceivable in the Soviet era, as it is happening here now. And Russia is not a weak power, so there is a lack of a political will. And why this has happened is something it is for them to analyze and tell us, or analyze and draw up a new behavioral pattern. I cannot say anything other than that. What is going on like this.
But you still believe that Trump, again, my impression is that Trump genuinely wants to end this war, to get it out of the way so he can focus on other parts of the world.
Professor, let me clarify that point.
Yeah.
I do not dispute the integrity of the person, Trump, when he says he wants the war to end, because he is intelligent enough to know, and the American security establishment has also drawn up rational assessments to show. Maybe a section of the security establishment in London and Washington have a different ulterior motivation, but that is a different matter. Otherwise, objectively, even for you and I, it is plain to see that the balance is tilted in favor of Russia. So Trump has a problem, because much as is said that Trump inherited and did not question the Ukraine policy of the Obama administration, and in fact developed it and enlarged it and transformed it into a full-fledged proxy war. I don't know whether even Barack Obama would have agreed to a proxy war, but Trump did it. Trump was instrumental in transforming it under his watch. Now, after that, today we are in a situation where if a new direction, the war is not taking a new direction, like the war is going to be fought on Russian soil, and the real bleeding is going to begin for Russia. Unless something of that sort the NATO does, with the connivance of the United States, the war is lost. And Trump's agony is understandable, that it is going to take place during his watch. So posterity, history will write that Donald Trump was the man who lost Ukraine. And he was the man under whom NATO was lethally humiliated. And the Western alliance system unraveled. I'm now mentioning, in fact, the consequences of defeat, which we know that defeat is not something for Zelensky alone. There is a much bigger picture there. So the authenticity of his anguish over the war is understandable. But I don't know whether it is really in terms of the loss of human lives. How often has Trump spoken about the loss of lives that are taking place in Gaza? So, if he has a bleeding heart, he doesn't have to look very far. His own allies and friends are doing such barbaric acts. And he lost his voice there completely. Why is that? It's because he is a practitioner of realpolitik. And for such a person, a certain kind of selectivity is necessary. And that is what is manifesting in his occasional swipe at Putin and Russia, or about the Russian killings. Aren't the Ukrainians indulging in assassinations, string of assassinations? Has Trump said anything about it? Trump's problem about Zelensky was largely in the previous period, when you look back, was over the deal, the minerals deal. That was what his problem was, to get it on American terms. Largely it was that. And then I don't know whether he is really going to spend his political capital in any significant way. Is he exercising his prerogative as a leader of the Western alliance system? Why can't he have a consultation to put an end to this charade, that is being enacted all the time by Macron and Starmer about coalition of the willing and all that? Because it is undermining Trump's own effort. Now, Trump is not intelligent enough to understand this. So, we come back to the same thing, that a basic reassessment fundamentally is required about Donald Trump's intentions. All we have, to the contrary, is a clutch of words by him that he opposed wars and that he's against interventions. But that is a very prudent, realistic policy, because America is not in a position to win foreign wars anymore. So tactically, it is a very right thing to do. It's a very enlightened policy, realistic, very coldly realistic. But this bleeding heart business and all this, I don't buy it. His art of the deal, when you look at it, there is a lot of there is a practical approach to deal making on his part. He is not a romantic. He is not an idealistic mind. So he is coldly logical, realistic about reaching his objectives. Look at the way he has finished the new leader in Damascus. And I thought, when it was announced in the press, for example, I'm talking about his political personality, that it came all of a sudden, and I even had a conspiracy theory that this might have been the brainwave of the Saudi crown prince. But no, he went back there was a special envoy appointed, and that special envoy has the same DNA as Steve Witkoff. And, all of them have made their money in real estate business, and they're all together in this. So there is a pattern, but look at it fundamentally. Now, if Barack Obama had been like Trump, he could have supped with Osama bin Laden and also, brought him to this sort of a situation. So, they finessed this man, Al-Shara, and now they are dealing with him. What does it show, Professor? It is a height of cynicism. I wrote about it today. It is a height of cynicism that, there is no morality about it. And it shows a man who's singularly lacking in conviction. And after meeting the man in Riyadh, what did he tell the reporters? You look at the clutch of words that he uttered. It makes no sense. A real fighter, tough, all the rest of it. Damn it, this is a man who was a butcher. And Osama bin Laden at least didn't have blood on his hands. This man had. And now, to pivot a whole regional strategy on the personality of such a character, he should have been sent, in fact, from Iraq to Guantanamo Bay. He was a fit case to be put aside there in Guantanamo Bay. What did the Americans do? After 5-6 years, consulting him, hobnobbing him, persuading him, cajoling him, after that, they set him free and told him to go to Syria. That's what he did. So, there is a backdrop to all this. The leopard doesn't change its spots. It is consistently there for you to see if you want.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering as well now if the Russians have concluded that Trump is not actually serious about ending this war. That is after the attack on its nuclear forces, because even if Trump wasn't directly involved, even if he didn't know about this in advance, it's very difficult to explain the reactions thereafter. I mean, across the West now, the politicians, the media, there's a strange exhilarance and excitement. No one seems to see anything problematic in attacking the nuclear forces of the largest nuclear power. And Trump hasn't come out. He hasn't condemned or, said anything of common sense at all. So it does, I think you're probably correct that the hopes in Moscow that it is possible to find peace with Trump, that this is diminished significantly now as a result of this. But as the diplomacy obviously is not moving any real direction, what the different sides will continue the war. That is, in NATO, there's a bit of a panic that Russia is winning. So again, which is why the Germans are now preparing for direct attacks on Russia and with their Taurus missiles. This is why, of course, we're having strikes now on their nuclear forces. But the Russians as well, they decided as long as the diplomacy doesn't move forward, then they will continue to expand. So they're moving now into Kharkiv and Sumy region. Where do you see this ending? I mean, how did you see the likelihood of NATO perhaps joining in, intervening like the British suggested, or is that off the table? Or does NATO prepare or prefer to, stay behind and pretend as if they're not a participant?
European societies are not going to allow their masters, the incumbent political leaderships, to put boots on the ground. And the Russians do have the capacity to slaughter them and send them back in body bags to Paris and London and everywhere. And then all hell will break loose. So as it is, these are countries in very deep crisis. And that crisis is partly handled by raising this phobia over Russian threat. Now, therefore, I don't think that we are anywhere near that. And also, none of these countries really have that kind of military strength today to fight a continental war with Russia. So that's not the issue. I approached it a little differently, Professor. What prevents Putin from picking up the phone and for a change calling Trump? Assuming the Russians have also come to this conclusion, which I came to, and which the ex-CIA analysts came to, without much difficulty and without being on the inside track, logically, that there is a CIA MI6 hand in this. Now, in that case, the Russians should know in no time. They have certainly the professionalism, their security agencies, to arrive at right conclusions about it in terms of circumstantial evidence and so on, and the information at their disposal. If it is so, I think it is time that for a change, he dials Trump's number and asks for a conversation, and that he confronts Trump with this data. I think that should be the first step of Russian reaction, and confront the man and seek a showdown with him by assembling the facts in front of him. That is, if Russia thinks that this is not only, I think it's not only a matter of humiliation. This is a very stark message that Putin is actually riding a paper tiger. That is a message out of this, that the perpetrators of this act have conveyed to Russia, that you cannot, comrade, go and hide anywhere. We will come after you. And we are there inside your house. These are the messages which are being conveyed here. So therefore, he should confront Trump. What has happened to you? You are a bombastic man. You speak morning, afternoon, evening, night. You sleep only 4 hours. The rest of the time you are talking. So why is it that you have lost your voice? I find from reports, I really don't know the authenticity of it. There was even an attempt about a week ago or something like that to shoot down a helicopter in which Putin was traveling. Even that should have been a fit case, because then Putin would have been talking to a man who survived assassination attempts, who could understand the depth of feeling about it. Now, what is the culture that the Americans are introducing today in international relations? Is this how superpowers behave? Britain is very good in this kind of operation, without being in the front, up front. Take to this kind of activities, blowing up a bridge to derail a train and kill civilian passengers in the dead of night. And, this is apparently, and then they are bragging that this is how they bled Nazi Germany. And, this is a kind of thing. And then some others are calling it a Pearl Harbor. All this nonsense is going on the other side. So what is it that is preventing the Russians? I cannot imagine at all, a horrific thought in my mind. Is the Russian leadership compromised in any way? Is there anything like in my country? We reacted to a certain situation, the rightness or wrongness of it apart, its effectiveness apart, a certain type of situations warrant a certain type of reaction. And you cannot question it. And Russia is not reacting like that. Russia is stepping back a few steps and taking a chalk and drawing a red line there on the sand and said, this is my new red line. This will not do. So the first step is, to catch the man who is in charge and tell him a few things in plain terms. Because what is this relationship about? US-Russia relationship, if there is not even an elemental honesty and sincerity about it. And I cannot imagine that a flunky in the CIA would dare to do this sort of an action without keeping the White House in the dark. I cannot imagine that such a thing happening. When Trump has, apparently put in key places people who are loyal to him personally in the security agencies. I don't want to mention the names, but So then with all that marshalling of effort, I cannot imagine that he was in the dark. So something has gone really horribly wrong. here. And it must, therefore, the Russian reaction must begin with Donald Trump, tackling him and bringing him down from his high pedestal, a man with a bleeding heart and blah, blah, and ask him, is this how you want? Now, I understood from the CIA analysts, I did not know the fine print of the START Treaty. Apparently, the START Treaty prescribes that the strategic bombers cannot be parked in the shelters. Did you know this, Professor? I did not know this.
No,
They have
no.
they have to be out in the open. It is prescribed under the treaty. And the Americans, both the Americans and the Russians, mandatorily have to park their strategic bombers out in the open so that the satellites can see their whereabouts. It's a very important, pivotal aspect of the mutual confidence.
Yeah, the weakness
So,
of any
so you can.
transparency, though.
I don't think this, ex-comedian Zelensky has the means to work out all this so neatly. Americans knew precisely where the bombers are parked because the Russians are obliged, in fact, to park them in places where the Americans can see them. So what is the way the Russians, when you speak about the Russians' reaction, the Russians should also, blast some of those strategic bombers on American mainland and in Europe. That is the proper reaction necessary. Because who will know this? Belarus will not know this. Russia's close allies, North Korea, will not know this. It's only Russia which will know that, that these strategic bombers are parked here, whether it is in Nevada, whether it is in Florida, wherever it is. Go and hit them in that case. That is a proper retaliation. Because, if you understand the seriousness of what has happened, before that, Putin should speak to the commander-in-chief and ask him, why is he behaving in this kind of a silly way? This is a game both sides can play. But then again, you come to this point, their feeling, their assessment is that Putin shies away from taking tough decisions. That's why I said that I really don't know whether some of these people are compromised. It can happen. History shows that such things happen. Weak leaderships bring about calamities on a nation.
So if you were advising President Putin at the moment, would you recommend this, though, that to do a retaliatory strike against European or American nuclear forces as to restore the deterrent?
No, it has gone beyond this. This is not a question of retaliation anymore. It's a question of coming down to the brass tacks. Why are you doing this? That is the question. Why are you doing this? Because they are incrementally pushing the envelope. So this game of retaliations don't make any sense. They lost their relevance in the situation. Look at that map. I have traveled all over that country. It's not very easy to send a truck right down to the Russian Far East with this sort of thing. So, they look at the kind of penetration they have made. The vastness of the country, you take the Trans-Siberian train, you will see how these people managed it. So there's something very wrong with the way Russia is governed today. There's no question about it.
Well, I guess it takes me to my final question. How do you have any predictions in terms of what they will actually do? Because Putin in the West is
I will be very simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
Russia should jettison this brilliant romantic concept of the attritional war, at least now. Finish this war, for good or bad. That is a sensible thing. If for finishing, when Trotsky went to negotiate with Germans, and at the signing ceremony, the Russians insisted that the Bolsheviks should appear in formal dress. And Trotsky found it militating, the thought. He cabled to Lenin and asked him for orders. And Lenin replied, apparently, according to a certain version, that if you want, if they are asking you to wear petticoats at the signing ceremony, do that. Because the objective is clear, that Russia wanted peace. I'm talking about the First World War.
Yeah.
So, so this is the point, that sort of a clarity of mind should be there. And therefore, now take the war to its logical conclusion, give the commanders the freedom to work it out. And, and instead of, just like this broadcasting every day, that we have now got 25% of this particular village and so on and so forth. So one way of doing it is that finish the war and create a fair assembly for the NATO and these other countries. And there's nothing more to be done. I saw the map that Medvedev drew. If that is within the Russian capability, do it. That is the way it has to be done now. Because otherwise, this buffer zone is not going to make any difference. I can tell you that.
But to finish the war faster, then it would entail much more powerful weapons, perhaps use of more Oreshnik missiles and something that would dramatically escalate the casualties. But wouldn't Russia, pursuing a much more aggressive path, also lose then the sympathy and support of key allies, be it China, India?
I don't think the Russians have to listen to China, India. I don't think India sought Russia's concurrence for doing certain things in the recent past. Countries, their leaderships should decide themselves what is to be done. So do not bring in China, India, North Korea, etc. into this equation. It's completely irrelevant. And I think the Chinese are certainly wise enough to withhold from giving their opinion on an issue like this and not counsel anything, because tomorrow it may revisit China also.
Yeah, no, you're probably correct. Now I also expect some dramatic escalations continuing in the days, if not weeks, to come.
Let me just sum it up like this:
Yeah.
that why don't the Russians in that case put Oreshnik missile in a museum? Why do you develop these weapon systems, at such enormous cost? I would imagine that with your back against the wall, when you face a situation like this, it is to tell the adversary not to repeat. I have the firepower. So I don't know whether we should even quibble over it. If Russians do have this, and I believe they have some 50 of them in their hands, use them. And dramatic escalation, what more escalation are we talking about? When it is because of this talk about the escalation ladder and so on, that we came to this point. The initiative lies with the West in terms of, transgressing the red line. And they've done it with impunity so many times already. So try and win the war if you have the weapon systems and the hyperactive missiles and so on in the quickest possible way. Instead of keeping on saying that, the Ukrainian military is at the point of collapse and they don't have the ammunition and all that kind of stuff, which I see in the podcast, the pro-Russian podcasts, which are broadcasting this kind of assessments, that within next 4 weeks or 2 months at a maximum, the Ukrainian military would collapse. In that case, give a good push and finish with it.
Yeah, so dangerous times indeed. Ambassador Bhadrakumar, thank you so much for your time. It's
Thank you.
Terrifying times to be
And
alive.
I hope, Professor, I have not upset you.
No, it's well.
I said things because I'm genuinely a friend of this country, and I believe in India-Russia relationship. It's very vital for India that we have a Russia on the global plane, and willing prepared and able to play its role in global politics. That without that kind of a balance, we will be at the mercy of people like Donald Trump or Macron. So I don't think that that will be a very comfortable way of life for us. So I want Russia to survive this. I want Russia to continue to be effective on the global plane. And it is with a certain sense of anguish that I have spoken.
Yeah. Well, even people who hate Russia should think twice about the wisdom of actually attacking its nuclear forces. This is, yeah, beyond insanity. So, well, thanks again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.